going, oh gee, that really doesn't feel nice. And again, so what it's basically saying is it keeps everything nice and crisp and clear without colour fringing on the edges of things. Whereas obviously something like that doesn't. If we just go back and we use our example of, can you tell me, if you read off the sheet there, what is the Abbey number of a 1.67?
31.
31, which is a little bit better than that, but not a shed load better. What about a 1.6? I think you'd already told me.
41.
41. It's good. 41's really not.
31, isn't it?
Yeah, not going to show virtually
So the higher
any.
the Abbey number, the better? Is that what
Yeah, the higher the Abbey number, the better. And so what about a 153?
43.
43. So 43 is pretty good. 41's really good. So, as far as material, so you can see, depending on what value you want, things have different things. And there are some materials that just generally tick a lot of boxes, and there are some materials that don't tick as many. So our 167 at 31 is great if someone really has a high prescription and they want it to look cosmetically good. But we may actually find that, and you'll see that listed, if their main criteria is they're a truck driver and they just want the absolute best clarity at night and they want everything to look really, really good, you might be better to say, hey, we'll make sure we select the right frame so it's going to be comfortable. It will show a little bit more at the edge, but let's go for a 1.6 index because it's pretty light, pretty thin, not as thin as this 1.67 one, but optically it just gives you that little, a few percent extra better, clearer vision and less likely to have a little fringing on the lights or things like that. It's going to give you the best possible clarity. Would we go and put a truck driver in 159? Drives at night, interstate, got a fairly high script. And what I should say too is, the higher the script, the more this becomes significant. So hence using this 1.5 material in plano sunglasses as a non-prescription. Sunning doesn't tend to be an issue, and in fact a lot of sunglasses use polycarbonate, a lot of safety glasses because it's very cheap to manufacture. It's not very good with scratch resistance. Its other material that polycarbonate we don't like is it's not very stable material. Lots of chemicals, household chemicals, acetone, all sorts of things will actually dissolve the lens. And again, if it's not very good with the coating because it's actually, it's very impact, it flexes a lot. And it flexes, if you imagine you've got all these nice hard coatings on the top to try and stop the lens scratching, what happens when the lens starts to flex? Well, the coatings are all a bit firmer than the material, and those materials end up with lots of stress fractures and cracks, which we call crazing, but effectively they're stress fractures and cracks. Or again, if they get thermal shock, okay, they go from hot to cold pretty quickly, you'll get stuff. So it's not a very stable material. So we don't like it for that particular material, and in our practice, we almost never use it because of that. It's the most common thinner lens used in all the corporates because it's cheap. It's easy to sell, 10 times more impact resistant, UV inhibited, lighter, thinner.
But
Sounds good.
just not that great? It's not
But,
as
but if you've got a moderate prescription, it's going to make your vision blurry.
Yeah.
It's going to fall apart after 12 months or so or less, and it'll have a fairly high rate of the coatings falling apart and becoming a problem. And don't get anywhere near any household chemicals with it if you're a cleaner or anything else, because you'll probably destroy your lenses even quicker still.
it's not very versatile.
So for us, we just think there are so much better materials on the market to use, but all the major corporates and all our major competitors, when they talk about they're using their light and thin lenses, they're talking about polycarbonate. Some of the probably other big corporates that are a little bit more reputable will also have options for these other materials as well, but the main first upgrade for people, I think we'll better go that little bit thinner for you, that's where they go.
So no good for a truck driver?
No good for a truck driver
For
who's
most
+6 or -8 or -4, because as soon as the prescription goes, basically for instance, anything with a lower Abbey number, we used to always say that basically anything over about ±2.5 to 3, particularly in plus was worse than say 2.5 plus 2.5 combined power, which is not that strong when you start thinking about it. A +1 with a +150 add. This one's actually you shouldn't use that. That's what they used to say in the corporate. don't use it above that. But we won't get into what other organisations do or don't. But you can sort of see, so there are different properties of different lens materials, and they do help guide why we'd say it's not just about going, oh, well, whenever we can, we'll just go and go, oh, well, 1.5's cheaper, so we'll upgrade our clients to 1.53 or 1.6. For a lot of clients, 1.5 is actually probably the best material. It's cheaper,
It's got
really
clarity.
good optical clarity, it's pretty scratch resistant, the coatings on it are going to be very stable, it's pretty, it's pretty durable in a lot of different environments. It's it's a very good material. They invented this one. It's called Columbia Resin 39, CR39, because they took their 39th step of this Colombian resin that someone was experimenting with. And the 39th time they got making up the formula, they finally cracked something. They thought, well, hey, this seems pretty good. Ticks a lot of boxes. And since then we've been trying to add more and more materials. But as far as optical and getting numbers like that, 58, we still haven't been able to get anything better than a 1.5. So 1.5 material is still very good, but often we find that things like a 1.53 and a 1.6 are still great materials because of the fact that they tick some boxes as far as that impact resistance being improved, or the durability being improved as far as nylons and rimless and stuff like that for chipping. They've still got pretty good ABI numbers where we shouldn't see any colour things, but they're a bit thinner and lighter. So they start ticking some of those boxes. But for those people who have a low script and they don't need it much more light, and they're wearing it part the time, and they're not old and their skin's not starting to have trouble with bearing the weight of frames, and they've got them on and off, and they just need something that's durable and functional, and they've not got a higher prescription, 1.5's still a great material. If they're kids, it's the 1.53, and they're more likely to be tough, and we're worried about safety and all the rest of it, and moving them up into a 1.53 is an excellent option because it ticks a lot of boxes. Okay? But if they've got a very high script, we might have to go, oh, well, we can pick a material not quite as impact resistant, but we do need to go that bit thinner again, otherwise cosmetically it might be unappealing for the child.
Yeah.
So you can see the interplay between wanting thinness and lightness, but also wanting to make sure the other properties of the material suit the purposes that the client is going to need them for. It's not just about, you'll see very strong, I'm not about just selling someone something that's at a higher price just because
It's a
a higher price. There are some people who've got a very low budget, and yet for their needs, because they've got a high prescription and all the rest of it, really we need to go 1.56, 1.6 as a minimum, because otherwise it's just going to be horrible and it's not going to suit the purposes that they need. And there are other people who've got, they've got oodles of money and they could, but why? There was no need to necessarily upgrade them beyond the basic sort of material, because other materials aren't going to suit their needs any better than the basic one. And then for some people, if they're really after, I guess, an example of...
Oh, who's this?
Hello, George. And so you're here in the fields. Hello, George.
Batman.
Say hello to the camera. Okay. Off you go, George.
Interview over at